Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Aero League Racing Tier 3. My name is Aman, and you all join me today for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It's an exciting race that we have in store for you all today. It's a very interesting circuit, a circuit with very long straights and a tight, twisty section. It is a street circuit after all, so drivers will have to be very careful while making their overtakes. But unlike Monaco, there's actually room and there's enough room for, enough room at a bunch of parts of the circuit where three cars could possibly go wide, where as Monaco wouldn't even allow two. Regardless, we're all set to get underway here very shortly. I apologize if my throat is a bit out of whack, and if I sound a bit different, it is because I am coming down with something and my throat is just completely messed up. So once again, I apologize for that. But regardless, yeah, we should be getting started soon. We'll be getting started very soon. From what I can tell, we have 19 drivers racing today, so tons of carnage, tons of overtaking, and tons of great racing in store for us today. So until then, get comfortable, get yourself something to eat, something to drink, grab a loved one, and we should be getting started very soon. Right, with 17 drivers currently in the lobby, why not take some time out to quickly review the driver standings at this current stage? So, only 3 rounds left to go, and at this current moment, Groen leads your championship standings with 98 points. Vitor and the AlphaTauri sitting very close behind him with 89, bringing the championship fight right to your championship leader. CRF, Groen's teammate in the Ferrari, sitting in P4, we have Mini Turns, who has currently 68 points, and P5 goes to Pointers, who is sitting with 58 points. The rest of the top 10 would be Luke, MBMA, Abmo, Benny, and Trems. Looking at the constructor standings, Ferrari lead the top of the table with 175 points. Following them very closely is AlphaTauri with 132, with Williams in P3 with 114. Alfa Romeo round off your top four with 83 points, and Haas in P5 with currently 72 points. The rest of the bottom five would be McLaren, Red Bull Racing, Aston Martin, Alpine, and Mercedes in that order. So, just about to get started here soon enough. I think we're just waiting on two more drivers, but let's talk about this circuit, shall we? It's a very interesting circuit, one which has one of the longest straights on the F1 calendar. But then again, also it has a very tight and twisty section. Obviously, Azerbaijan or Baku, renowned for its castle section, which is undoubtedly one of the most tightest sections on the calendar, and will definitely result in some DNFs. Well, at least I predict, is what's going to be happening. Regardless, I think the setup wise, drivers should be looking for something that has a good balance between everything. So you have 90-degree corners, which will require a decent amount of downforce, but then you have such long straights where you may want to compromise on that downforce for that higher top end speed. So actually, I don't think we're going to be waiting for any more drivers. We have gotten the go ahead from O'Leary that we're all set to get the Azerbaijan Grand Prix underway, so it should be exciting. But yes, it would be lovely if someone could give me an update, whoever's in the race actually at this current stage, if there's going to be any rain expected. I know Tier 3 has been cursed by somebody that they're going to be experiencing rain at 90% of their races, but hopefully we could be in store for some dry racing here at Azerbaijan. Obviously, with the DRS and ERSs and slipstream battles, we could be looking forward to a lot of overtakes and a lot of lunges as well. I'm predicting that there definitely will be some safety cars in this race, but I have been proven wrong before, so who knows? There's also been a bug that I witnessed with Tier 4 where the pit entry got completely blocked off because I don't know what happened there. It was just a complete glitch where somebody went into the pits and he just stopped in the middle of the pits and he wouldn't let anyone else through. Hoping to avoid something like that this time around, as we wouldn't want anyone's races to be compromised because of in-game bugs. So here's to hoping everything works out for the best. We've got almost a full grid here today. So I think we have a lot of exciting racing in store for us. Right then, let's quickly get all our data and telemetry and everything set up real quick so that we don't miss out on anything. We'll have a full track map. And now, who will be the first driver to step out onto the grid right now? Obviously, there is no rubber out on track at this current stage, so the lack of grip is definitely going to be present. It seems like we have relatively clear skies for qualifying at this moment, which is great news since we'll be in store for some very, very fast laps. So, here's to hoping that the whole race stays dry, but wishful thinking with Tier 3. And according to the data, it seems like there's an AlphaTauri that is coming out on track. Let's take a look at who that might be, and it is the AlphaTauri of the Mighty Chump. So, the Mighty Chump has been struggling relatively this season, but it could be a time to change it around. Azerbaijan is a relatively simple track as long as you can keep it outside the walls. But we'll be riding on board with him. We do have a McLaren that would be the McLaren of Abmo that has come out right behind him. And we have a Ferrari right behind them as well, and that is the Ferrari of CRF, who's you're currently in P3 in the championships. Regardless, our attention will stay on the Mighty Chump, who we will be riding on board with through the first time lap of this race. And we can get a good idea of how tight and twisty this section is through this onboard. You can see the chicane over here. Better to avoid riding that curve as it'll cost you a bunch of time. Coming towards this right over this thing, it's track leniency here is definitely present, so it would be better to save your time that way. And here is the very tight castle section. Not enough room for two cars to go wide through there, and especially not in tier racing with other drivers who could be prone to making mistakes. So we'll have to see if any driver is brave enough to maybe make a lunge or maybe attempt to make a move through that section. Coming up towards this left-hander, it's very easy to outbrake yourself here and go straight into the wall. We've seen this previously time and time again as drivers seem to outbrake themselves and break their front wings and wheels off right off their car. Regardless, that would round off Sector 2, and the entirety of Sector 3 is essentially completely flat out. So it's a whole slipstream and DRS ride as the Mighty Chump drives straight into the wall there that may have compromised him and caused him some front wing damage. Let's take a look at his car real quick. Doesn't seem to have caused any front wing damage, so I think he's completely fine for now. And we'll ride on board with the Mighty Chump for the first time lap here at Azerbaijan. Let's see what he can do for us today. Hey Reaper, yeah, hopefully no dumb driving like Tier 4. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that there's no pit issues like we had in Tier 4. I was discussing it with everybody earlier that Tier 4 had that pit issue where somebody got stuck in the middle of the pits and then unfortunately nobody could get through. Regardless, hopefully clean racing as well from Tier 3. But going back to the Mighty Chump's lap at this current stage, you want to stick it as close to the left as possible through that corner. Arctic Squirrel seems to have been disqualified from the session for parking in a dangerous location, so that's very unfortunate for him. That will bring the end to his run. It does seem to have happened in actually it doesn't really say where. We did have a yellow flag in sector 2 and 3. But the Mighty Chump keeping it relatively clean through this lap, coming towards the castle section. What will he be able to do? Rides the curbs a lot there. Nearly loses his car and drives straight into the wall, but keeps it nice and tidy. We do have Abmo right behind him, so that just shows that Abmo is relatively quicker than the Mighty Chump on this lap. Hopefully hopefully the Mighty Chump doesn't manage to hold up Abmo. But if Abmo is... Oh, and that's exactly what I was talking about over there. Driving into that wall, it's very easy to do that and break your car's front wing. But the Mighty Chump seems to have gotten away from it. Abmo now very close behind him. We know he's the second runner for his time lap. Admo would definitely be looking to tuck right behind the AlphaTauri of the Mighty Chump so he can use that slipstream to his advantage. And as we come towards the end of this lap, let's see what everyone can set. The Mighty Chomp comes across the line and becomes the first time car to set a time, and that's a 146.8, a not very competitive time at all. Meanwhile, Admo setting a 141.5, setting the benchmark for the rest of the drivers. CRF comes across the line, sets a 140.8, and already a car has already entered the 140s. And we can see FX and Parker, the fourth runner, I should say, has now set a 141.6. Vitor, the teammate of the Mighty Chump, has managed to set a 142.5. And it seems like, Groen actually out of nowhere has set provisional pole time with a 140.4, and his teammate CRF 4/10 behind him with a 140.8. So no drivers right now entering the sub 140s, but that could change completely. Admo for podium again, we would certainly hope so. Pointers comes across the line, sets a 142.2, and that places him into P9. The Cunning Fern, on the other hand, in his Alpine, DRS wide open. We can see the Haas right behind him, trying to catch up to him. What can the Cunning Fern do? Comes across the line, sets a 142.0. And now we only have a handful of drivers left. It does seem... Now, the interesting thing about a circuit like Baku is the fact that you, as a driver, could possibly go for 2 runs in a row with your soft tire compounds. Your tires are definitely good enough to last 1 or 2 laps around here, contrary to other laps. We see the Noob Squid has now begun his time lap around the circuit. And while I actually say that, let's take a look at Groen. He does seem to be completely out of ERS at this current stage, and so does CRF. So nobody seems to be going for second runs at this current moment. So we can just ride on board with the Naked Champ and Noob Squid. Noob Squid unfortunately seems like he's had some sort of incident there with a yellow flag in Sector 1. And the Naked Champ currently setting a 35.8 in Sector 2, so he is absolutely blazing at this current moment. No purple sectors on the other hand. We'll see what the Mercedes can set up. Admo's actually decided to come back straight into the pits, as well as CRF. That's interesting. So does that mean that the Mighty Chump is out for another lap? It could possibly be the case. He has slowed down massively, possibly because of the incident that he was involved in where he drove into the wall and compromised his lap time. Mini turns actually in P15 with a 2 minute and 1 second lap, so he must have definitely had some sort of incident there. But the Naked Champ comes across the line. What time will he set? He manages to set a 142.0, and unfortunately that isn't good enough for a top 10, but it does place him P11. What about the Noob Squid? He seems to be on his timed run at this current stage, maybe hoping to do better than his than his Mercedes teammate. Ooh, you'd want to be a bit closer to that curve there on that occasion, but regardless, as long as you're not in the wall, it's all good. Consistency is big key here around a street circuit like Azerbaijan. And the thing with a track like Azerbaijan is that it may be relatively simple on paper, but you cannot get too comfortable racing here. You need to make sure that you stay on your toes at all times, and as a matter of fact, Mini Turns actually managed to set a 140.9 and promotes himself up into P3. After being dead last, and Noob Squid abandons his lap and decides to come into the... That seemed to have invalidated his lap time, so that would be the end of his run at this current moment. And we can see CRF is now one of the first drivers out for his out lap. Admo's actually going out way before him. So we have Admo, who's going to be saying, oh, there's actually a Haas in the wall there, and it is the Haas of Mini Turns. I'm not too sure what happened there. That must have been an end lap. He does have 2-lap-old softs, and for some reason he just must have lost control of his car and driven straight into the wall there. That's very unfortunate for him. Regardless, we'll bring our attention to Admo, who becomes one of the first cars to set his second time on the board at this current moment. Well, he's going to be beginning his lap soon. Currently placed very, very nicely up the grid with a 141.5. He is roughly a second off provisional pole position, but assuming that he can find that lost grip, I'm sure he could. He may be putting himself in a very good position to be a contender for a possible podium or a race win in the race. So let's spectate Admo as he begins his second timed run. comes across the line and begins his first second time run. DRS wide open, heading down into turn 1, 90-degree corner. You want to go as left to right, right to left as possible. Coming up to the second corner, which is also a 90-degree corner, followed, which comes right before the second DRS zone of the circuit. There's a yellow flag up ahead of him, but it may be just cars slowly getting out of the way of each other. Growing, your current provisional pole sitter has not really gone out to set another lap time just as yet. Maybe opting to wait a little bit longer before he decides to do so, and you can see the sparks flying off from underneath Abmo's car. Coming through the fast chicane, he does manage to keep it very nice and tight. He has managed to set a purple sector 1, so Abmo definitely improving on this occasion. Assuming that he can keep it relatively clean for the rest of the lap, brings it very close to the wall on the outside and comes through the castle section. Doesn't clip any such walls and manages to make a very nice run through that section. It's very easy to unsettle the car there, as the bumps are a bit more trickier than you could imagine. So even though you could ride them, it does make it a bit harder to keep your car stable through that part of the circuit. And now finishing up with Sector 2, he does manage to set a purple Sector 2 as well. He's only a 10th up on his time at this current stage. It doesn't seem like he's going to be setting provisional pole. I'm not too sure why the data would advise that he's set a purple Sector 1 and 2. And we can see a Mercedes that has gone into the wall there on the other side of the track. Not too sure what happened on that occasion. Regardless, Abmo, currently sitting P5 with his DRS wide open, comes across the line. What time will he set? He sets a 141.3, so not a massive improvement, but it is enough to push him up into P4. We can see the Ferrari of CRF, who's also completing his run, roughly 2/10 up on his time, coming through Sector 3. It's a completely flat-out section, even though there are a few turns here. Pointers seems to have retired from the session. Looks like he's retired on track, so it may be because of some sort of incident he was involved in, maybe driving into the wall there. Regardless, let's see what P3 in the championship can set. CRF comes across the line. He manages to set a 140.6, so it's still not good enough to upset his teammate, who is on provisional pole at this current moment. Let's see, O'Leary has now come across, actually has begun his timed run. It seems like Vitor is actually on a run at this current stage. There is a Mercedes that is out on run. It is beginning its time run, as a matter of fact. The Omura, new debutee in ALR Tier 3. He had made quite a nice statement with his qualifying pace in the last race. Unfortunately, it did not transition into anything too great for him. Regardless, we'll see if he can make a nice comeback here. Coming towards the end of Sector 2, towards this left-hander, keeps it nice and tidy and doesn't drive into the wall there, which seems to be a bit of a trend here. Pasti has now managed to promote himself up into P4 with a 141.2. Gap to provisional pole is only 2/10 from CRF. However, the Omura is currently with a 141.9. So definitely massive improvements needed, assuming if he wants to push himself up into that top 5. Regardless, let's see what time he can set. And as a matter of fact, he actually chooses to abandon his lap and go straight into the pits there. Not too sure why he would do that. Parker seems to be roughly half a tenth up on his time. He is currently P9. And you gotta love that camera angle there. The sweeping shot of the Alpine coming across through that section. We do have another yellow flag in Sector 2. That seems to be the Haas of maybe Pasti or the mini turns. I'm not entirely too sure. Regardless, let's take a look at Parker. Where can Parker put himself? 132 on the board already. It is a long run down back to the pit, down to the checkered flag. There goes the 140, so there goes pole position, but Parker actually manages to promote himself up into P6 with a 141.3. 4 minutes left on the clock, so not much longer for these drivers to make their moves. Trems decides to come into the pit and abandons his lap. And Groen, your championship leader at this current stage, who is also on provisional pole, is now beginning his first time lap. So he does have provisional pole, but he maybe feels like it's just not good enough. 2/10 isn't a massive gap to close down for some of these drivers, and it's definitely possible to find on a circuit like Baku. So let's see what Groen could maybe pull out of his hat. Oh, it did seem like the rear tires off Groen were a bit unstable there, but we'll see if he loses to a little bit of time by the end of Sector 1. I actually want to ride on board with Groen and just see how he performs. Coming towards this chicane section. Ooh, you don't really want to try riding on those curbs too much, but on coming towards this right-hander, it is nothing but curb. And there you go, that's how it should be done. Oh, actually, never mind. Groen actually drives into the wall on the outside there. It doesn't look like he's lost any of the damage on his front wing, but seems to be still continuing at a good pace. Seems like Groen is not exactly locked in on this lap. We'll see if he's improving on this section. And as a matter of fact, he is roughly 2/10 up on his current time. It doesn't seem like it's the best lap. There definitely seems like there's a bit of is an improvement regardless. And now coming into the first DRS zone of this circuit, DRS wide open. What will Groen set? He manages to set a 140.3 and manages to extend the gap to CRF by roughly 3/10. Will it be good enough? We will have to see. Mini Turn seems to be coming in at the end of this lap. Actually, he's saving up his ERS. He does have 2-lap old soft. Could Mini Turns possibly be thinking about going for another run on his soft tires? I know the softs are definitely good enough for 2 laps, but I wouldn't be too sure about 3. But the driver would know better. There seems to be a bunch of traffic here through this section. Let's take a look at this right now. So the Naked Champ getting past what seemed to be the Aston Martin of Tichy Boom. And actually manages to get past the Red Bull of O'Leary by the looks of it. So drivers definitely trying to stay out of each other's way. Let's take a look at Passy, who's currently on his out lap, sitting in P5, roughly a second behind provisional pole. There's another yellow flag in Sector 2. So all these drivers who are now currently out on their out laps. Let's see what each of them can do. CRF has actually opted to come back into the pits. We do have a yellow flag. Oh, as Trends has a massive collision there with the wall, and has unfortunately DNF from this session. Apparently he brought it a bit too close to the wall there, and unfortunately that's going to be the end of his run. We'll have to look at the rest of the grid, how the rest of the grid progresses. Pasty is currently now beginning his first time lap. The Ferrari of Groen has now also decided to come into the pits. It seems like Mini Turns is on a run here with a 140.9. He is currently sitting in P3, 6/10 behind provisional pole. What will Mini Turns be able to do? Will he be able to upset any of the drivers up ahead of him? It doesn't look like the Ferraris are going to be going out for any further runs. So if there's any time to get past these drivers, it is now. And as a matter of fact, no, it isn't. Mini Turns decides to slow down massively and comes into the pits. And that allows Abmo in the McLaren to promote himself up into P3 with a 140.7. Roughly a 10th behind P2 and 4/10 behind P1. What about Passy? He's 3/10 down on his time. It doesn't look like he'll be massively improving. What about Parker? Currently P7 with a 141.3. No improvement just as yet. Or it could be that he's going for another run. He definitely does seem to have enough ERS on this occasion. Vitor, on the other hand, unfortunately seems like his car is completely out of ERS, so it doesn't look like he'll be massively improving through this section. Meanwhile, O'Leary in P10, roughly a 10th up on his current time. Can't lower any the expectations any more than that. Yeah, that's unfortunate, mate. But with time winding down, there's not really much more else any other driver can do. O'Leary, currently sitting in P10, will be looking to definitely improve. He is up by 3/10. We'll see where he puts himself. He has managed to set a purple Sector 3. Now O'Leary, coming towards the DRS zone, is 3/10 up on his time. May he be looking to upset any of the drivers in front of him? We will have to see. DRS wide opens as he approaches the finish line, and he manages to set a 141.2 and manages to promote himself up into P5. That'll drop down the Cunning Fern into P6. And by the looks of it, it doesn't seem like any other driver is going to be completing their run or be managing to set any competitive lap times. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, a big congratulations goes to Groen, who has set provisional pole and actually has taken pole position here at Azerbaijan. CRF in the Ferrari as his teammate manages to get P2. Abmo in the McLaren upsetting mini turns and keeping himself up into P3. And the mini turns and O'Leary round off your top 5. Ab came out of the pits and didn't move out of my way, ruined my hot lap, then I ran out of fuel in the next. That's really unfortunate, man. I'm sorry to hear. You'll have to probably report that to the stewards. He could be looking at a potential penalty points or potential what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember. Regardless, yeah, you should definitely save that replay and report it to the stewards. Or maybe just talk it out with Abmo. I don't know. You guys do you. So Groen manages to take pole position here. It'll be interesting to see how the drivers can fight back from this situation. Good quality from Groen, yeah, I can tell. 3/10 separating you and CRF. I wouldn't say it's just smooth sailing just as yet. Missed so much time? Yeah, unfortunate Parker. Regardless, P9 is not a bad position to start with. There's a ton of places you can make up. Plus, Baku is just one of those kind of street circuits where it's so important to keep yourself clean through racing through the circuit, and it's always important to never get too comfortable racing on this circuit. Because the second you start taking it lightly, boom, you go straight into the wall, and that's the end of your race. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the weather. It seems like we have clear skies here in Baku. Doesn't look like there's a possibility of rain, so this is great news for some of the drivers who I know have a bunch of dry setups prepared, and a few of them were taking precautions trying to get wet setups ready for themselves as well. Hopefully they won't need to come into effect, at least not by the end of this race. Regardless, let us ride on board with Groen as he leads the rest of the grid through the formation lap, and we can take a quick look at everybody's tires for the start of this race. So a bunch of drivers opting to start on the mediums, actually most of the grid opting to start on the mediums, the only exceptions being Abmo, who's currently in P3, has decided to go for an alternative strategy, and has put on the hard tire compound. FX and Parker in P9 has opted to go for the soft, and Noof Squid all the way down in P16 has opted to go for an alternative strategy with the hards. So definitely the consensus seems to be the same, that the medium tire compounds seem to be the best tire to be on for the start of this race. And Abmo, who's the only car in the top 8, I'd say, with a different set of tires, that too being in P3, we'll have to see how his tire choice affects him at the start of this race. Obviously the hards don't nearly have as much grip as the mediums do, but assuming that he can find that grip, these hards can go a very long distance, and plus it may be beneficial to him in case a early safety car occurs. Yeah, absolutely. Abmo has picked the best shout if safety car comes out. Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, it's a very it's a circuit where the safety car can be triggered very, very easily, considering there's not really many runoff areas for you to go if you go straight into the wall there. So obviously you bounce off the wall, you go straight back onto the track, so I won't be surprised if there's going to be an early safety car, especially while drivers are going through the castle section. Parker making the dumbest idea to start on the softs. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that one. With again, like a track like Baku, it's never a sensible decision to be going there, and we can see the predicted pit stop strategy where the mediums seem to be the optimal tire, lap 11 to 15 being the predicted pit stop window to switch on to the support for Groen seems to be very present in the chat at this current stage as well. Yeah, within the first 5 laps, yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine that the safety car takes any longer than, I'd argue even than the first 3 laps. And Groen has not wasted any time at all going towards his starting grid position, obviously leaving some of the cars very far behind, so he'll have to wait quite a while on the grid. His tires may be getting a bit cold there, but we'll have to hope and pray that it doesn't come back to bite him too much. Yeah, okay, Reaper, I believe you. Being nice. Right, ladies and gentlemen, as all the cars begin to line up on the grid, we are all set to get the Azerbaijan Grand Prix underway. Groen has now managed to take pole position. He is your championship leader. Will he be able to maintain the lead? We will have to see. There are red lights on the board. There's 5 red lights. It's lights out and away we go here at Azerbaijan. CRF manages to get a decent start, but not good enough. It seems like Abmo has been very, very heavily compromised, possibly due to the hard tire compounds. And CRF has actually been overtaken by mini turns. So CRF drops down into P3. Looking down the grid, we can see, Abmo is actually driven straight into the wall there. So those hard tires definitely not helping him out in this current stage. O'Leary has managed to promote himself up into P4, Pasty in P5, Abmo in P6, Cunningford in P7, and Trems in P8. And actually, as a matter of fact, looking up the grid, we can see Groen has completely spun out there. What happened with Groen? He's gone completely into the runoff area, possibly missed his braking point, and now's dropped down all the way into P18. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, your race leader for this current stage is the mini turns. Obviously, no DNFs just as yet, so there hasn't been any safety cars out on track, and we can see in the background there, O'Leary may be thinking about making a dive down the inside of CRF. Thinks better of it and tucks right behind him, and as the drivers approach the castle section for the first time, we'll have to see if there's any incidents getting involved over here. We'll spectate drivers as they come through. Abmo unfortunately going very, very slow there, possibly due to wing damage, and a bunch of cars actually managing to keep it relatively clean through that section. There doesn't seem to be any driver who's driven into the wall in the castle section, which is very surprising and very pleasant to see. Regardless, mini turns leads this race. O'Leary right behind CRF, not allowing any room to breathe there. Passy, on the other hand, also closing up very close behind the Red Bull. Maybe trying to tuck into the slipstream behind him, and we can see Trems actually getting into a battle with Vitor. He did seem to go a bit wide into that corner. I'm not too sure what happened there. And Abmo, unfortunately, who's been compromised without a front wing, actually. I didn't even notice that Abmo has no front wing, and that allows Trems and Vitor both to get past him. Meanwhile, Vitor trying to get past the Alfa Romeo of Trems, trying to tuck into the slipstream, possibly making a dive down the inside. We'll have to see about this. They're both side by side going into turn 1. There's 3 cars going wide into turn 1. And Parker, completely out of nowhere, goes up into P5. And that unfortunately compromises Trems, who spins out. And unfortunately for him, that would probably drop him down very far down the grid. As we can see, he's now currently in P15. Parker, who made a dive down the inside. There were 3 cars wide heading into turn 1, and with the softs, Parker has now managed to promote himself up into P5. It has been a very chaotic start here at Azerbaijan. No DNF still just as yet. We can see the predicted pit stop strategy once again popping up. Lap 11 of 15, the predicted pit stop window for this race. And we can see Parker is now beginning to hold up Vitor and Tichy. We'll see how long they can be patient behind him. Obviously, once again, never a smart decision to dive into the inside, into the castle section, and it doesn't seem like they're making that unsensible decision. Vitor opts to stay behind Parker. But assuming that he gets a better run, and won't be surprised if he makes a lunge heading into this left-hander as we get a predicted pit stop strategy for the 3rd time. Yeah, 3 wide into turn 1, never a great idea, but unfortunately it seems like Trent's got the short end of the stick there. I hope he came away without damage. It doesn't look like he's coming to the pit, so we'll have to see. We do have a yellow flag in Sector 2, and that does seem to be the AlphaTauri of the Mighty Chump. He has stopped on track, but I don't think he's DNF just as yet. CRF manages to set the fastest lap time of this race, and now DRS is now enabled as race control gives us the update. So, oh, it showed that he was 3/10 behind him, but it's dropped down massively by a second almost. But with DRS wide open, we can now expect a ton of more overtaking. As we'll see over here, Vitor opens up his DRS flap right behind Parker, tucking into the slipstream, but Parker actually pulling away from Vitor. So regardless, it doesn't seem like it's affecting him too much. We do have another yellow flag in Sector 1, and it seems to be the Mercedes of Noof Squid. Whatever incident he was involved in, it doesn't seem like it's held up anybody too badly. And we have a bit of a DRS train beginning to form from P5 all the way down into P8. And oh, it seems like Vitor's completely lost his car there. Coming through the fast chicane, it seems like he's gotten on the throttle a bit too early there and unfortunately spins his car around. So that's definitely going to loosen up some of the pressure on Parker, who now has the Aston Martin of Tichy right behind him. Yeah, absolutely, Reaper. I'd love nothing more to have you on co-comms. I think it'd be super fun. 7/10 is the gap between Tichy and Parker. And CRF seems to have dropped out of the DRS zone of mini turns. It's going to be very painful for him. He does need to keep himself in that DRS zone if he has any attempt at maybe catching up to mini turns up ahead. Regardless, let's spectate Tichy, who is now roughly 5/10 behind Parker. Parker is on the soft compounded tires, and mini turns actually sets the fastest lap of this race. And with DRS wide open, it doesn't seem like Tichy's just about fast enough to catch up to Parker on this occasion. So for the second time around, Parker seems to be using a lot of his battery to keep that position from Tichy, but for how long can he keep doing so? Obviously, you only have a limited amount of battery. There's only so much you can use, and once again, it seems like Parker is just pulling away from Tichy. So maybe it may just be a setup issue where Tichy does not seem to have enough top speed on his car to maybe catch up to Parker. Looking down the grid, we can see the Omora on his second race, right behind the Aston Martin of Arctic Squirrel. Groen, who did start on pole position, is now currently in P14 after he dropped down into dead last. It is nothing but an uphill battle for him. Lap 4 of 26. Massive respect to these drivers for not causing a safety car at this current stage, so it has been relatively clean racing. Unfortunately, we've had a few issues involving the back of the grid, and the Cunning Fern being the first DNFE of this race. I'll actually have to bring my attention up towards the grid. So CRF now roughly 9/10 behind mini turns. Assuming that he can stay within the DRS zone of mini turns, it doesn't seem like he seems like he's a bit too far back on this occasion to maybe catch up to him. Oh, and as he approaches the detection point, actually never mind, CRF does, what? So it's a bit of a jump between the second and outside of the second, and unfortunately it doesn't seem like CRF got the ERS on mini turns on this occasion. And as I say that, Tichy's actually right behind FX and Parker on this occasion. So with DRS wide open, so Tichy now side by side with Parker, chooses to go towards the outside line. Let's see who will come ahead of each other over here. Parker and Tichy going side by side. There's a bit of wheel banging going on between the drivers. They're still side by side heading into turn 2. Who's going to come out ahead? It does seem like Parker's going to dive down the inside and fight this position tooth and nail with the Aston Martin. But that battle is compromising them as Luke seems to be getting very interested. And there is a massive crash in the background there. I'm not too sure who that involved. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have the first safety car of this race. It seems like the Omora got involved in some sort of massive incident there. I'm not too sure if he's lost his front wing or not. But we have the first full-fledged safety car in this race in lap 5 of 26. That's very unfortunate because we were about to have a great battle between Tichy, Parker, and Luke. But just as I say that, the safety car does come out and has to spoil the fun for everybody. So now with the safety car out at this current stage, it gives us a chance to review the current positionings of all the drivers. Mini Turns, who did start in P3, is now your race leader. CRF, who started in P2, stays in P2. O'Leary in P3, Pasty in P4, Tichy in P5, Parker in P6, Luke in P7, Arctic Squirrel in P8, and Vitor in P9, with the Naked Champ rounding off the top 10. Unfortunately, your pole position sitter, Groen Vogel, has got involved into some incident and now has dropped down all the way at the back of the grid into P14. Obviously, there is no overtaking under the safety car, so drivers will have to maintain their positions. They'll have to abide by their... I'm sorry. Lap 5 called it? Yeah. Just spot on the money. Actually, as a matter of fact, Mini Turns becomes the first driver to enter the pits without having the reason for a broken front wing. And him and Pasty both have decided to come into the pits. And we'll ride on board with Pasty and see how that ends up for him. And Mini Turns opts to switch on to the hard tire compounds. Will it have costed Pasty though? Let's take a look. It doesn't seem to have costed him too much, so the Haas drivers actually timed that double stack very, very well with each other. And Mini Turns, who was your race leader, oh no, who was your race leader, has unfortunately gone off into the runoff area there. It seems like he's had the same incident as Groen did, and it may be because of the fact that he had those cold hard tires on. So what does this mean for Mini? It may have compromised him significantly to get back into the lead of this race, assuming that the cars ahead of him come into the pits. However, behind the safety car, I don't think it may have costed him too much. If there's any time to get away with an incident like that, it is now. Obviously, you'd want to avoid it completely, but if there's any time to be committing any sort of mistakes, it is behind the safety car. The gamble had paid off. Lap 5 was your box lap. Well, happy to see that Parker is having some significant luck in his race. I'm more confused as to how you managed to type that while racing. I think you should maybe stay focused on the road there, bro. Regardless, we'll keep our attention towards CRF, who is now your race leader. As it's lap 6 of 26, it doesn't look like the safety car is going to come in at the end of this lap, as the drivers have not bunched up behind the safety car just as yet. So a few drivers did decide to come into the pits. CRF, O'Leary, Tichy, Arctic Squirrel, and Vitor all opting to stay out. So the top 5 still on their old 5-lap old mediums. And everybody behind them has decided to come into the pits. Groen, actually, who also decided to come into the pits, is now currently in P11 after his pit stop. So he must be very happy with himself there. Now what will CRF do? Will CRF decide to dart into the pits? He decides not to, opting to stay out. Probably the more sensible decision, as it's a bit too late on this occasion. Maybe hope for a second safety car under which he can maybe optimize his plans, but at this current stage, all the top 5 decide to stay out. As Parker offers his apologies to Trems. The drivers are still relatively far apart from each other, and unless they can bunch up with each other, I don't see any reason why the safety car would be coming in at the end of this lap. Excuse me. It is lap 7 of 26. Only 19 more laps to go in this race, and we've already had an action-packed filled race. Actually, while we have the time, why not take a look at who's made up the most positions? So, Arctic Squirrel, currently sitting in P4 without his stop, has moved up 14 positions in this Grand Prix. Tichy has moved up 5. We can see O'Leary has moved up 3 positions. Luke, who has made his pit stop, has made up 4 positions. Groen, unfortunately, dropping down 10 positions, along with Avmo, whose unfortunate start to the race has caused him to drop down 11 positions. So some significant moves being made around. Obviously, the top 5 are yet to pit. Parker actually opting to go onto the medium tire compound with 19 laps left to go. Those mediums will definitely not make it to the end, but he may be looking forward to another safety car. And as we come across the end of Sector 2, we still haven't gotten any update from race control, so it seems to be another lap behind the safety car. Unless they make an extremely late call. which, to be honest, I've seen before, so I wouldn't be surprised. But no, by the looks of it, the drivers will be having one more lap behind the safety car. There was a massive incident that we saw in the background there as we were spectating the fight between Parker. I can't remember who it was. I believe it was Parker or Luke, and I believe it may have been Tichy. I could be wrong there. I still don't know how Parker managed to type in chat while racing in the game. We do have a car that is completely ghosting at this current stage. That is the Aston Martin of Arctic Squirrel. Now, unless he's DNF from this, disconnected from this race, you are not allowed to ghost under safety car conditions under whatsoever. That is part of the ALR rules, as well as Giga Chat things. Yeah, I can tell by the way you're misspelling the words. Stay on him, please. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you cannot ghost under safety car regulation, under the safety car by any means. But regardless, it seems like Arctic Squirrel is doing it. I don't know if he's exactly disconnected from this session or not, but we will have to see about that as we review the footage. And another thing that drivers seem to do very, very frequently, but they're not allowed to do, is resetting back to track. It is not allowed, and you can definitely receive penalty points and you know, time bans and whatnot for resetting to track. Obviously, it's not administered very, very strictly, but if it is, then you will be caught out and you will be penalized for it. Now then. Lap 8. And now we finally get the update from race control that the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. So now it will be up to CRF to bunch up the rest of the grid. His job will be to bunch up the rest of the grid and go at a time that he deems best. Obviously trying to catch the Red Bull of O'Leary out. We're right on board with CRF to get a better idea of when he decides to go. We've seen earlier in Tier 4 that a bunch of drivers decided to go very, very early on, which didn't seem like to be the most sensible decision, allowing the cars behind them to catch up because of the slipstream. And CRF taking his time. O'Leary seems to be right behind him, does not want to miss the second that CRF gets on the gas. And now, there we go, CRF now full gas, seems to have caught O'Leary just out there, just a little bit. Tichy, on the other hand, seems to be right on the spoiler of O'Leary. Heading down into turn 1, will he make a dive? A bit too far back on this occasion. We can see the Alfa Romeo of Luke trying to make a move on Pasty. Unfortunately, can't do anything just as yet. And heading down into turn 2, there still doesn't seem to be any overtaking opportunities showing themselves. Trems does manage to get past FX and Parker, who's actually side by side with him on this current occasion. So they're still side by side heading into the next corner. Who's going to come out ahead? It seems like Parker. Oh, they're still side by side going into this corner, and it seems like Parker has driven straight into the wall there. Unfortunately, not enough room to go around the outside, and unfortunately, because of that incident, he goes straight off the track and straight into the wall there. It seems like it's caught Omura out as well, who's now dropped down into P16. Looking up the grid. Actually, very surprisingly, because despite the DNF, jump onto Arctic, please. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, he's still ghosting, so it seems like he may have disconnected from the session. So that seems very unfortunate there. Regardless, Vitor gonna take full advantage of it, disconnected or not. He does see a ghosted car in front of him, a potential position to be gained. He brakes super late, unfortunately, just not enough to get past Arctic on this occasion. He's actually ghosting through Arctic and trying to get past him and promoting himself up into P4. Obviously no DRS just as yet, so drivers will just have to tuck in right behind each other and hope that the slipstream is enough. It doesn't seem like it's enough for Vitor at this occasion. Admo actually managing to get past Pointers. They're side by side, and no, never mind. Admo does manage to get past Pointers even before the corner begins, and Vitor diving super late, and this was expected. This was the move that we were looking forward to. and promotes himself up into P4. Mini turns, despite after his incident, managed to promote himself up into P5. Obviously, the top 4 still have yet to pit. And these medium tires now slowly getting worn out, so these hard runners are coming into their own shape here. For how much longer will they be able to keep their positions? We will have to see. Luke and Arctic coming, actually never mind, Arctic getting overtaken left, right, and center because of his ghosting, so there's no point trying to spectate those fights. You can see Luke in the Alfa Romeo very close behind Pasti, his teammate Trems right close behind him. 2 Haas's and 2 Alfa Romeos. What will be the team orders here? Coming through the castle section. No incidents just as yet. Luke does ride over the curbs massively on that occasion. And Mini 2 tenths behind Vitor now. This is for P4, and those medium tires now finally coming towards the end of their lifespan. I can't predict for much longer that Vitor will be staying out on track. It may be sensible to finally come into the pits sooner or later. Miniturns thinks about diving down the inside, but chooses better of it. We have another yellow flag in Sector 2, and that is the Mercedes of Noof Squid. Doesn't seem like he's DNF'd, and we have another yellow flag in back of Sector 2, and that seems to be the Omora. And now multiple cars getting very close to each other to make possible overtakes. We can see Mini turns right behind Vitor. We can see Trems and Groen very close together with each other. And actually, Vitor opts to go into the pits there. And that promotes Mini turns up into P4. Looking at this battle, both the Alfa Romeos nearly coming together on this occasion into turn 1. And Trems stays in P, actually keeps the position of P6. Oh, and Trems outbrakes himself and drives straight into the wall there. And that compromises his teammate right behind him. If that caused him wing damage, Trems needs to do the right thing and get out of his teammate's way. He'll only be holding each other up. There seems to be nothing but chaos going on at Baku here, where it's only lap 11 of 26. We still have 15 laps to go in this race. And we can see this DRS train beginning to form right here, growing. Opting to go dive down the inside, and that incident was not a smart decision. Groen coming into contact with the Alfa Romeo up ahead of him. Luckily, it doesn't seem like any drivers received any massive damages from that, but that was a very unsensible move by Groen. There was not enough room to make a move through that corner, and unfortunately loses his rear end, and that promotes Abmo up into P8. So incidents after incidents. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Groen is maintaining his cool through these corners. And unfortunately, because of these incidents, he's dropped down into P9, and now has come under threat from the Mercedes behind him. Looking up the grid, we can see Tichy is now very close behind O'Leary. This is for the position of P2. We'll see if he can make any moves just as yet. DRS wide open. What will Tichy be able to do? He is gaining on O'Leary. Looks towards the inside line. Both cars, the Alfa Romeo and the Aston Martin, going side by side into turn 1. And Tichy manages to promote himself up into P2. Actually, never mind. It seems like O'Leary actually is trying to get the switchback on the Aston Martin. And actually tries to drive down the inside. Unfortunately, he has to go over the over the curbs there. And that doesn't help his run into the next corner. It seems like Mini turns completely on him. This is for the final podium position. And Mini turns opts to back out of this corner on this occasion. But O'Leary, despite going towards the inside line, unfortunately does not get a good run through that corner. And now they're coming to a bit of contact there. That does force O'Leary slightly into the wall there. And now Mini turns has been promoted up into P3. Will O'Leary dive down the inside? No, he will not. He's actually coming to contact with one of the cars next to him and now has spun out. And O'Leary has dropped down into P8. And is continuing to drop down and lose positions, and that promotes Mini turns into P3. Trems and Pasti now coming into a battle with each other, the Alfa Romeo and the Haas, and Pasti manages to retain his position of P4. Heading into the castle section, will Trems be trying to make any sort of moves? We'll have to see. Nothing doing yet. Mighty Chumps manages to get a 5-second penalty, being the only driver on the grid who has a penalty at this current stage. The Alfa Romeo of Trems. He can smell that position of Pasti. He can smell that Pasti is not too comfortable in it with his car. What will he do? Decides not to dive down the inside on this occasion. And now Mini turns very interested in P2 with Tichy right in front of him. Obviously, Tichy's still on those 11-lap-old mediums. hasn't decided to come into the pits just as yet. But that may change now, as it seems like he's going towards the left, and he is. So Tichy now finally deciding to come into the pits and lap 12 of 26, and that promotes mini turns up into P2. CRF now being one of the only drivers at this current stage still running their original 12 lap old mediums. And we have a yellow flag in sector 2 and 3, and that is the Red Bull of O'Leary, who has unfortunately DNF'd from this race. It doesn't seem like there's any more overtakes. It doesn't seem like there's a safety car. Never mind, a full-fledged safety car has now come out. Lap 13 of 26. We have our second safety car of this race. What a chaotic set of laps that was. So now CRF currently 5 seconds ahead of mini turns. There is no better time than to come into the pits now. It is either now or never for him. Oh no, mini turns actually gets a speeding under the safety car penalty, drive-through penalty for him. Mini turns, what are you doing? You were in a perfect position to take the lead of this race and you throw it away with that? That's so unfortunate for mini turns, who's now unfortunately got a drive-through penalty. And that may spell the end of his podium position chances. There are only 13 laps left to go. It's not impossible for him to fight back up into the podium positions, but granted, after that incident, it's going to be very difficult. And let's see if, as predicted, CRF does decide to come into the pits. It is lap 13 of 26. It is definitely the pit window for those medium tires. I can't imagine that CRF is actually going to be opting to stay out for much longer, and he isn't. Actually, he is? No, he isn't. Okay. I was worried there for a second. I thought CRF may have opted to stay out. Mini turns actually opting to stay out. Trying to keep some heat in his hard tire compounds. He does get promoted into P1, but unfortunately has a drive-through penalty to serve. The medium tires can go 14 laps maximum. CRF needs to box now. Yeah. There was no way he was going to stay out any longer than that. That was the perfect opportunity to come into the pits. And we can see a bunch of drivers actually opting to come into the pits. Pasty unfortunately being held up for some reason, maybe because of a slow pit stop there. And now comes out in P7 by the looks of it. Avmo coming out ahead of the drivers, coming out of the pits in P10. And Pasty gets a 5-second penalty for crossing the pit lane, exit white line. Drivers will need to be very careful while doing that. These are inexcusable penalties. These are penalties that you shouldn't be even, these are penalties, you shouldn't be getting penalties, period. But there are penalties which are completely avoidable, just as long as you do sensible driving, as long as you are aware of your surroundings. And if you're just joining us for Tier 4, it's lap 14 of 26. This is the second safety car of this race. Mini Turns currently leads the race, but unfortunately has a drive-through penalty to serve. CRF currently sitting in P2 after qualifying P2, and Pointers in the Williams being currently in P3. Groen has pushed himself up very nicely after his incident, and now he currently sits in P5 with fresh mediums. Those are definitely going to make it to the end, so we'll have to see how they come into effect with the cars ahead of him. So lap 14 of 26. We have 12 more laps to go. More laps to go. How many more safety cars are we predicting? That's the big question. And Mini Turn's actually coming into the pits now to serve his penalty. And we can see he drops down massively. And of course, 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So Mini Turn's nightmares continue to roll in as he comes in to serve a penalty and unfortunately gets dished out another one. That must be extremely frustrating for the Haas driver as he now drops down all the way into P11, and unfortunately has to now serve a 5-second penalty on top of that. It seems like Mini Turns can't seem to catch a break, but after that pit stop, CRF now is your race leader, with Pointers currently in P2 and Tichy in P3. Groen, after his incident and dropping down to the back of the grid, gets promoted up into P4. Actually, Groen, Trems, and Pasty, all these three drivers do have fresh mediums on their cars. Pasty, of course, has a penalty to serve as well. And as it's lap 15 of 26, cars haven't exactly bunched up just as yet, so we'll have to see if race control does give us the update if the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. One lap too many on the mediums, and my car lost all traction. Yeah, that's very unfortunate to hear. But that's yeah, I'm not too sure what to say about that. It's important to obviously keep an eye on your tire conditions to know when or when not to push. I just hope that you can bounce back from it for the next race, man. Sorry to hear. We come towards the end of Sector 2, so let's see if race control gives us the update. And they have. Race control has given us the update that the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we will be riding on board with CRF, whose job is it is to pack up the rest of the grid. And with the safety car coming in at the end of this lap, CRF is going to be trying to catch Pointers completely off guard. We can see him weaving back left and right, trying to get some temperatures into his tires. What will Pointers be able to do to combat this? CRF hasn't decided to go just as yet. Still pushing it very close to the start-finish line. When will he decide to go? Let's see. Still hasn't gone, and now has decided to go. Has caught Pointers massively off guard there. As we look at the back of the grid, there doesn't seem to be any massive overtakes taking place just as yet. Heading into turn 1, Pointers maintains his position of P2. Looking at the back of the grid, Vitor manages to get past the ghosted car of Arctic Squirrel. And heading into the next corner, the Ferrari of Groen and Tichy actually coming together into turn 2, and Groen managing to promote himself up into P3. But that contact over there costed Tichy dearly, as he now gets overtaken by Trems. So Tichy will definitely not be happy about that occasion, maybe looking to report. And as we look at the back of the grid, we can see Pasty and Tichy now coming into battle with each other, and Pasty now getting past Tichy. So in the span of a few corners, it seems like Tichy's worst nightmares have come true, as he's dropped down massively after the safety car restart. Mini Turns currently in P9. He still does have that 5-second penalty. And actually at the top of the grid, we can see Groen trying to go side by side with Trems, and actually manages to make the move against Trems, and now promotes himself up into P2. I was not expecting Groen to make any sort of moves in that section there, but he does manage to do it, and now promotes himself up into P2. Trems drops down into P3, and Arctic Squirrel drops down massively, possibly involved in some sort of incident there. It doesn't seem like he's DNF'd, but he has dropped down. So there doesn't seem to be another safety car out on the circuit at this current stage. Mini Turns now trying to move himself up the grid, has moved himself up into P8. The Naked Champ going side by side with Diomora, who's going to come out ahead of here, and it does seem to be the Naked Champ, but Diomora is not giving up that position just as yet. These Mercedes and the Williams going side by side with each other, and during that side by side racing, unfortunately the collision has taken place. The Naked Champ unfortunately spins out and drops down into P13, while Diomora manages to retain his position of P9. Very unfortunate for those drivers over there. It could have been very fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing that we could have witnessed, but unfortunately that isn't taking place, and now Abmo has retired from the session. What happened there? I can't exactly even see where Abmo's retired on the session. I don't see the McLaren anywhere. Could it be that Abmo is just retired in the pits? We can see Vitor going side by side with Tichy now, the Aston Martin and the AlphaTauri, and Vitor diving down the inside, getting the overtake done, and now Mini Turns coming into the battle with Tichy, and manages to overtake him as well, and now Tichy's dropped down all the way into P8. Mini Turns, who was leading your race, is now currently in P7. We have a yellow flag in Sector 1. That does seem to be the Aston Martin of Arctic Squirrel. And the Naked Champ now gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. Mini Turns massively gaining on the AlphaTauri of Vitor. Decides not to dive down the inside just as yet. Now let's see how Pointers can defend. Heading into the DRS zone. And with 2 cars right behind him, how will he defend this? We will have to see. The AlphaTauri and the Haas looking to overtake the Williams of Pointers, who's unfortunately dropped down multiple positions. We can see Mini Turns is actually gaining on Vitor, opting to go around the outside as this current state. Actually, no, Mini Turns opting to come into the pits. So I'm not too sure why he's done that. There's only a handful of laps left to go, but unfortunately Mini has now decided to come into the pits. Vitor still tucked very nicely behind Pointers. Can't make a move just as yet. Looking up the grid, we can see Groen now closing in very rapidly to his teammate. Both these drivers are in contention to win the championship. Will CRF give up the position to his teammate? We will have to see. There may be no team orders flying around at Ferrari, and unfortunately, it seems like Vitor and the AlphaTauri of Pointers have come together in a contact collision, and unfortunately, because of that, Vitor had to drive off into the runoff area, and that's costed both the drivers dearly. We have another yellow flag in Sector 3. Not too sure what's happening over there. As Arctic Squirrel has actually left the session now. Lap 18 of 26. Both the Ferrari drivers currently running P1 and P2 respectively. Both drivers in contention to win the championship. Will there be team orders at Ferrari? We will have to see. Will CRF compromise his position to allow his teammate to possibly go on to secure more points in his championship lead? We will have to see. It doesn't look like he's getting out of the way. They're both going, seems like they're not letting up at all for each other. CRF opting to stay and keep the position. And never mind, CRF doing the right thing for his team, playing the long game for his teammate, and getting out of the way and allowing Groen to go through to maybe push his championship lead even further. That's great team racing there at Ferrari. And that allows Groen on the faster set of tires to now push forward and extend his gap to the cars behind. Looking at the back of the grid, Omura now closing in on Tichy. Those hard tires have obviously been eaten up by the fresh mediums. Lap 19 of 26. Only 7 more laps to go. Can Trems manage to close the gap to CRF? We have another yellow flag in Sector 1, and that is the Mercedes of the Naked Champ. Now Luke seems to be getting very interested in this battle, so there's a DRS train forming from P5 to P7. Passie's actually managed to close up very nicely to Trems behind. This is for the final step of the podium. Will Pasty be able to get past Trems? We will have to see. The Haas and the Alfa Romeo have been in constant battles with each other from the start of this race, and once again it is no different here. Pasty with DRS wide open. Let's see if he'll be able to gain on Trems. It doesn't seem to be the case. He's a bit too far back on this occasion to make any sort of moves on the car ahead of him. So he just opts to stay right behind him. Luke, on the other hand, trying to gain massively on the Omura. The Alfa Romeo and the Williams possibly coming into a battle with each other. Luke brakes super late, but it's not enough to get past the Omura on this occasion. So he decides to tuck right behind him once again. We can see Pasty in the second DRS zone, still unable to get past Trems. Is the story different at the back of the grid? Will Luke be able to get past the Omura heading down towards turn 3? No, he will not. And after those DRS zones, it seems like Pasty's actually managed to close the gap to Trems significantly. Both drivers are on the medium compounded tire. CRF still hasn't left the DRS zone of Groen, as a matter of fact. Vitor getting past Pointers and managing to take P8. There are only 6 more laps left to go. 2 safety cars have decided everything in this race. Cold tires, drivers driving into the walls, missing their braking points. That's been the story at Baku for Tier 3. And despite his penalty, Passy does not seem to be letting up on Trems. He is determined to get this position on him, and why shouldn't he be? As he gets closer and closer to him, DRS wide open. Is he a bit too far back on this occasion to make any dives? It does seem to be the case. Trems will keep his position of P3. Meanwhile, Luke in the Alfa Romeo now very close behind the Williams. DRS wide open, goes towards the inside line. Who's going to come out ahead of themselves? Let's take a look over here. Both the Williams and the Alfa Romeo going side by side with each other into turn 1. Going into turn 2, it seems like the Omora has backed out of this battle and has allowed Luke to go through. But with the Omora with DRS, will he be able to fight this position back? It doesn't seem to be the case. A bit too far back on this occasion. And once again, we can see Pasti has massively closed the gap to the Alfa Romeo ahead of him. CRF and Groen in a race of their own, as it seems, as both the Ferraris now seem to be pulling each other along and away from the rest of the pack. Looking near the back of the grid, we can see Mini Turns is roughly 3/10 behind Pointers. Pointers, who was unfortunately in a good position midway through this race, has unfortunately dropped down all the way into P9 with his 15-lap old hards, currently having the oldest tire compound on the track, and actually getting out of the way and allowing Mini Turns to go through there. Often that there's no point really fighting with a driver who's faster than him, and we can see Trems unfortunately may have made a bit of a mistake coming through that corner, and Pasti thought about diving down the inside, but felt like he was a bit too far back. So what will happen here? We have a great aerial shot of the Haas and the Alfa Romeo heading down towards turn 1. And DRS now gets wide open. Pasti gaining slowly on Trems. But once again, Trems keeps his position. He doesn't seem to have much battery left. Only 16% of battery left on the Alfa Romeo. 16. Ooh, that was a bit glitchy. Now Pasti once again. After turn 2, heading towards turn 3, DRS wide open, now trying to go side by side with the Alfa Romeo. This is for the final step of the podium. Pasti trying to go around the outside, can't get the move done. Trems manages to maintain his position, and Pasti once again has to stick right behind him and stay in P4. Regardless, it seems like Trems had maybe a slight issue coming through that corner there, but once again manages to keep his positioning up P3. The Haas and the Alfa Romeo fight continuing lap after lap after lap. Doesn't seem to be any resting between these drivers. As we can see, CRF has unfortunately begun to drop off from Groen, who with his 8-lap old mediums is definitely now going towards a point where his tires will slowly start to drop off, whereas the hards are definitely going to have the same pace as they did before. So let's see how the medium tire life comes into effect near the end of this race. Lap 22 of 26, the Haas and the Alfa Romeo now neck and neck with each other. We've seen this overtake building up for the last few consecutive laps, and it doesn't seem to be any different here. The Alfa Romeo of Trems trying to defend from Pasti. Pasti trying to get past Trems. Oh, and actually, never mind. We have a full-fledged safety car. What has happened here? Seemingly out of nowhere, there seems to be a complete DNF in the form of Vitor. And in lap 23 of 26, we have a full-fledged safety car. I didn't even notice that the safety car was coming out. What happened there? That's a really late safety car, is it not? Unfortunately, Groen and CRF all managed to get past the safety car, so they're going to have to try to catch it in the next lap. That allows Trems, Tichy, and Luke and the Omora to all come into the pits and possibly switch on to the soft tire compounds for their final runs. This is very interesting now. 3 laps to go, 3 safety cars. And now Groen, CRF, and Pasty will all have to drive to catch up to the safety car here. Mini Turns gets promoted up into P5 despite and as a result of not pitting. I can't imagine that we'll have more than maybe arguably 2 laps more of racing. Vitor's left the session, unfortunately. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, lap 23 of 26, we've had our 3rd safety car, so let's quickly run down towards how the grid is shaping up. Groen and CRF with their 9-lap-old medium and hards respectively currently lead the race in P1 and P2. Pasty in P3 with his 9-lap-old mediums. Trems in P4 with his 0-lap-old softs will be looking to definitely make some moves on Pasty. Mini Turns, who decided not to pit with his 8-lap-old mediums, is currently in P5. Tichy, the Omora, Luke, Pointers, and the Naked Champ round off your top 10. We started this race with 18 drivers. There's only 10 left. Now what will Groen and CRF do? Groen decides to stay out. CRF actually decides to come in. Decides to do the exact opposite of his teammates. So now CRF will slowly drop down positions as the rest of the grid begins to catch up. Maybe he actually might just stay in P3. And he does, and this may have compromised his own teammate Groen, who decided to stay out. Why didn't Groen come into the pits? Yeah, albeit you lose like a position or 2, but that was possibly the more sensible thing to do. You obviously know CRF as who let you through earlier. And assuming Pasty's ahead of you with 10-lap-old mediums, there's no way he'll be able to stop fresh softs. Questions to be asked later. Mini Turns has decided to come into the pits once again, opting that his 9-lap-old mediums are not going to be able to hold his position. There are only 10 drivers left, so every driver will be receiving a point, assuming that they finish this race. It is lap 24 of 26. Oh, Mini Turns, what are you doing, mate? 5-second penalty for crossing the pit lane exit? Oh my god. These penalties are inexcusable. You can't be getting penalties like these. And race control has given the update that the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap. And now there are 4 drivers, all who are bunched up at this current moment. It is Groen, Pasty, CRF, and Trems. Obviously the safety car did not have enough time to let the rest of the grid bunch up together, so now it'll be up to Groen. Both these drivers, however, in P1 and P2 are currently on old mediums. CRF in P3 on fresh softs. Trems in P4 on fresh softs. When will Groen decide to go? He's going to have to cast the grid off massively. As he gets closer towards the pit lane exit, he is still not decided to go just as yet, possibly pushing it to the last possible second. And now Groen has decided to go. Pasty does get caught off slightly off guard there. We can see Trems trying to make a move on CRF, diving down the outside. Will he make the move stick? Let's see over here. CRF defending with his life, but unfortunately Trems does manage to get past him. And the Alfa Romeo promotes himself up into P3. CRF drops down into P4. Pasty cannot catch up to Trems cannot catch up to Groen, but Trems on the other hand looks towards diving down the inside, but thinks better of it. Pasty brakes super late, nearly coming into collision with the Ferrari up ahead of him. Our attention will stay near the front of this grid as there's only 2 laps left to go in this race. How will Groen and Pasty defend from these fresh soft runners right behind them? Heading towards the castle section. We can see those medium tires causing Groen to slightly lose control of his car there. Trems thought about going around the outside, but thought better of it. It's not sensible. It's not worth it. You want to maintain your position for now and just wait until the DRS zone. Actually, never mind. Trem's not deciding to wait for anybody. Thought about going around the inside through the section, but thinks better of it now. Will he make a dive down the inside into this corner? No, he will not. So the grid has now closed up massively with each other. Groen and Pasti, the only drivers at this current stage who have not decided to come into the pits and switch on to another tire compound. The gap isn't big. Trems closing the gap to Pasti. He's in the slipstream. The Ferrari right behind them. What will happen here? Let's take a look. Trems goes towards the inside line. What about CRF? He's catching up massively to the Haas ahead of him. It's not going to be 3 wide going into this corner, but CRF is also looking to make an overtake on the cars ahead. And CRF has come into contact with Trems, and now has come into contact with every single car next to him. Trems getting massively spun out there by CRF, and now CRF gets promoted up into P2. It seems like the Amora, coming completely out of nowhere, has now been promoted up into P3. A bunch of collisions have taken place, and that has completely shifted the grid order around. Pasti, who was in P2, has now dropped down into P5, getting overtaken by Luke, who drove straight into the wall there. Oh no. So some definite stewards reports gonna be taking place after this race. It is the last lap of this race. Groen has now pulled a 3.3 second gap to the cars behind him, all because of the collision CRF caused with every other driver. The Omora now trying to close the gap to CRF. Both drivers are on the soft tire compound. We can see Mini Turns gets promoted up into P6. Last lap of this race. It is do or die for most of these drivers. The Omora, roughly 6/10 behind CRF, heading towards the DRS zone. We can see Mini Turns. Oh, Mini Turns comes into contact with Luke. And Mini Turns unfortunately goes straight into the wall there. And unfortunately, that's going to be the end of his race. We can see Groen now. The gap to Groen is 1.3 seconds. CRF massively closing the gap to behind him. The Omora right behind CRF on this occasion. CRF now within DRS zone of Groen. Will it be enough? Let's take a look as he enters towards the DRS zone. It doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. And for your race winner at Baku, it is Groen. CRF comes in P2. The Omora in P3. Pasti most likely going to come across the line and finish up in P4. But with his penalty, he drops down massively, with Luke now getting promoted up into P4. Tiji getting promoted up into P5. Pointers getting promoted up into P6. Pasti unfortunately dropping down all the way into P7. Trems now comes across the line and finishes in P8. Mini Turns comes across the line without a front wing, unfortunately, and finishes in P9. And the Naked Champ comes across the line and finishes in P10. What an insane race we have had here today. Wow. Reaper saying that I bet this won't be as it finishes in the steward's room. Yeah, absolutely. I am most definitely going to be expecting a ton of turnarounds once the steward's reports come in, and as they should very well. There was a bunch of incidents involved there, especially near the end there. I know CRF was definitely involved in the incident with Trem, so we'll try to get him in for an interview and see what he has to say about it. But regardless, ladies and gentlemen, we can't take away from what was an outstanding race regardless. And your race winner here at Baku is Groen, who now extends his championship lead, heading into the last 3 rounds of the season. Growing, long time no talk. How have you been? Oh, joined the wrong party. My bad. Yeah, this is what I always mess up on. I always join the wrong parties and stuff. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just get back into the right party this time around. Oopsies. Unfortunately, just left the race leaders alone. Right. Hello?
Hey man.
All right. What's up? Congratulations, Growing. Welcome back to the podium. It's been so long since I last spoke to you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
How have you been? Talk to me through this race. What a chaotic race it was, especially with the late safety car. So, tell me, how was the
Yeah.
race for you from your perspective? You obviously had that incident where you dropped down to the back of the grid at the start of the race.
Oh yeah, that screwed me over big time.
Yeah, so what happened there? Did you just miss your braking point or what was it?
Yeah, I was a little bit confused. I just missed it by a little bit, and then I thought I can try it, but I think just go straight and then go back of the grid.
Hmm.
But when I was trying to get back on the track, I damaged my rear wing, so that was also damaged.
Oh, your rear wing was damaged throughout the entire race?
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. Well, I mean, you drove a fantastic race. It was basically from a dead last to a race win, so big congratulations for you.
Yeah, it was
You
a
get to
tough one.
extend your championship lead with only 3 races left to go.
Yeah, I'm happy. I needed these points.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. But a big congratulations to you. I'll bring my attention over to your teammate who did let you through at one point, CRF, and congratulations to you on your podium, man. You
Yes,
had
sir.
you had a bit of an incident there along with Trems near the end of the race. What happened?
Yeah, just I was went to the inside. He beat me to the corner, closed it off, and I was all the way in and had nowhere to go.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, obviously, you hate to see those kind of collisions, especially in such a tight race, especially near the end there. But you did have a fantastic race for you throughout the entire thing. Obviously, there's a reason why you were so high up on the grid order. Um, Also, big respect to you. I was not expecting you to actually let Groen through at one point. I thought because you were also in contention to maybe win the title, I didn't think you'd actually let your teammate through. But big respect to you, man, for actually doing so.
Yeah, he was on the better tire. He had a little more pace. We had constant comms, so we knew what was going on, and I was like, "Hey, that's the right decision." So, hey, take it, brother.
Absolutely. Well, a big congratulations to you, CRF. Any notable things that you want to talk about from your experience in your race, or nothing as
No, it was
such?
a good race, and I just want to apologize to Trams for that. Yeah, just a little too late for me to do anything. So, yeah, apologies for that.
All right. Well, a big congratulations to you as well. I'll bring my attention over to a person who's actually making his second debut, his second race here with Tier 3, the Omora. Congratulations, man. A podium already? Welcome.
Thank you. Cheers, man. Thank you very much. Oh man, I'm looking forward to going back to SnowRunner after Monaco and Azerbaijan, mate.
Yeah, yeah, I can't blame you, man. But no, this is great pace that you've been showing us, man. I mean, your second race with Tier 3, you're already on the podium. I mean, one would wish you joined the season earlier. Maybe you'd actually be putting up a fight with Groen at this stage in the season. But
I think that might be pushed it too far. To be honest, I finished Monaco, and God, I was delighted with how well it went.
oh
And
man.
then O'Leary had added me as a friend, so like in time trial, his time has been haunting me the whole week.
Yeah, no, that time trial
It's,
rivalry really pushes people. I've been there, man. I
yeah.
completely get it.
But no, look, just yourself. Fantastic work in the commentary. It's a great league, and I'm really, really kind of thrilled to be a part of it because it is kind of up in my game.
Thank you so much, man. I'm glad you enjoy the commentary, but thank you guys as well for giving me such a great race to commentate over. Obviously, I couldn't really do much if the race is just boring, but you guys keep it interesting for me. But going back to the race, the Omora, I saw that you were like pretty far down the grid up until like the very last lap. You jumped up massive amounts of position near the end there, didn't you?
Look of the Irishman. That's what it is. um, I got I got turned a couple of times. I was unlucky and I got a bit of damage, and then I pitted and I managed to keep coming out all right in the pits. It was honestly the safety car just came in perfect time for me each and every single time. I couldn't believe how well it kind of worked out for me. But I'll just say as well, congratulations to the other two in the podium and everybody else that's survived that.
Yeah, we started with 18 and finished up with 10. But I'm gonna let you guys get some rest and relax now. Once again, a big congratulations to you guys, and actually, you are right. A big congratulations to anyone who managed to finish this race. Uh, but ladies and gentlemen, that's all we will have in store for you for Tier 3. Obviously, the next race will be going towards the Netherlands, so Zandvoort, a circuit that's renowned for being a bit tricky on the tires. Obviously, you have a few areas where you think you can go flat out, but you can't. So we'll see how the drivers will fare themselves up on a track like that. I hope you all have enjoyed this race as much as I have. I know certainly I did. And yeah, please take care, everybody, and I will see you all next weekend.
Good job, Amon. Thank you.